Miraj.
Yes. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the program Tawhid and the Creation, exploring the book The Essentials of Tawhid, book 3 in the series, authored by Badasari Mani. My name is Muhammad Fasih Peterson, and joining me once again, Badasari. Badasari, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Muhammad Fasih and the listeners out there.
Shukran so much for joining us, Badasari, and Alhamdulillah, we are continuing to engage on the seventh verse of Ayatul Kursi. We left off last week explaining the concept of multiverses in attempting to describe how the samawat, the seven samawat, the seven heavens are different from what we understand them to be, and that there are different planes of existence, different dimensions. Um, so tonight we continue with our look at the concept of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala's throne, or rather Allah Subhanahu wa Taala's, yes, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala's throne, uh, and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala's kursi. We understand last week when we spoke about this, we made a distinction and we said that the Arsh is the throne of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and the kursi, which we are talking about here, is described as being a footstool, but we're not thinking about a physical footstool. And it is the barrier between all other planes of existence that exist below the seven heavens. But certainly when we talk about the when we talk and last week we did mention Mi'raj, but Sani also wanted to talk about the certain happenings that took place the night of Mi'raj, as Rasul Sallam ascended through these various samawat, um, these various planes of existence, to the point where Rasul Sallam came into the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the night of Mi'raj. So I would leave it to Bidasali just to elaborate on the point that Bidasali wanted to make, but unfortunately we did not have the time last week.
Okay, so Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa ashabi wa barik wa sallim. Muhammad Fasih, we said that there are seven heavens, and if we take the experience of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he traveled from the first heaven or the lowest heaven, uh, right up, and he stopped at each of the different heavens, and he had certain experiences, met some of the Anbiya there, and there are several narrations around the Mi'raj. Time doesn't allow us to go into that kind of detail, but when he arrived at the seventh heaven, now the seventh heaven uh, is mentioned in different places relating to different matters. But as you've indicated correctly, it is the furthermost boundary for creation. There's nothing, as far as creation goes, that can extend beyond that. That's off limits for anything that is in creation now. Now, what we find in the seventh heaven is also the Baitul Ma'mur. It's the Kaaba in the heaven. It's the the heavenly Kaaba. It's the equivalent of our Kaaba that we have here. And you find that there in the seventh heaven, the Baitul Ma'mur, the Malaika tawaf around that Kaaba all the time, continuously, from the time that they were created till the time that they will not exist anymore. Because even Malaika will have a point at which they come to an end, because only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no end. So even the Malaika has a beginning and has an end, but for their entire lives, some of the Malaika have been created just to make tawaf around the Kaaba. And it is said that as they complete their tawaf, then a new group of malaika joins them, and the ones who have been there before never come again. So every time that they complete their tawaf, then they are replaced by another group. So if you look at that alone, that the seventh heaven is uh, already, that demonstrates that there's no comparison between uh, what the seventh heaven looks like and what our dunya looks like. Because you're talking now malaika. Malaika is not visible to our eyes. We know very little about the malaika, and certainly they are beings that are made from nur. uh, we don't know what a being made of nur looks like. Now, the other thing is that the point at which the door kind of exists that closes um, creation from entering beyond is where the is by the Sidratul Muntaha, referred to as the low tree, and that's the furthermost boundary. Now, what happened was, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went on Mi'raj, he was accompanied by Sayyidina Jibreel in all his activity. When he first went on the dunya from where he was to Masjidul Aqsa, and that was still part of the experience that they had, yeah, on the dunya. Then they went into the second heaven, and Sayyidina Jibreel accompanied him all the time to assist him and to be his guide, uh, sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When they came to the Sidratul Muntaha, and Sayyidina Jibreel said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, please proceed. And then he said to Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, you've been with me all the time. Why don't you continue? So Sayyidina Jibreel said to him, if I move a fraction beyond the Sidratul Muntaha, I will be burnt to ashes. I will be completely incinerated. I will be non-existent, because now you're entering a domain of nur that was not even the type of intensity that even Sayyidina Jibreel, as the head of all the malaika, could withstand that kind of intensity of the nur. But he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared you. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as the most beloved of all creation, was given the opportunity to enter through that door. And what happened thereafter and how it happened is not explainable. But he came into the divine presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, it's important for us not to think that, and we're talking tawhid, so we mustn't make the mistake to say divine presence, no one else can go there, therefore it means that you are now with Allah. No one is with Allah. Allah is always alone. Allah is always one, and no one competes with Allah's oneness. Because the moment you say you are in the direct presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you think physically about it, then it means you are saying there's Allah, there was Allah, and there was Rasulullah. So at that point there were two entities, not only Allah the creator of the universe, but also Rasulullah. That would be incorrect of interpreting how we actually enter the divine presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, when we say that we are going to go to Jannah one day, inshallah, all of us, then we're going to meet Allah. it's the same concept of meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, should also not be confused. There will be Allah and there will be us. How that meeting takes place, and should be understood, should not ever interfere with our tawhid, that Allah remains one and never ever does anything exist at the same time where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, or in the actual presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those things are, even if the awliya and Rasulullah were to explain to us, our minds wouldn't be able to cope, because we are too attached to time and space where we find ourselves here in the dunya.
The voice of Pakistani Money. This is the program Tawhid and the Creation, exploring the book, The Essentials of Tawhid. And tonight we are focusing on the seventh portion, or seventh sentence of Ayatul Kursi, verse 255 in the Holy Quran in Surah Baqarah. And when we come back after the break, we will continue. Stay tuned. Where would Bilal like to go from here?
Maybe we say, but was that not the kursi that we were talking about? Yes, we were. So where does the arsh fit in? You know, so if that's the kursi, is that the throne? And we said this is a distinction between throne and arsh. So is there a difference, or is there not a difference? What is the relationship?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to the program Tawhid and the Creation, exploring the book The Essentials of Tawhid, with Pakistani Bani. And tonight we are looking at the seventh sentence in Ayatul Kursi, verse 255 in Surah Baqarah. And this is the verse wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Allah's Kursi. Now, obviously, we've explained that in the previous program and tonight as well, that the Kursi is the barrier between, or rather the barrier which nothing can traverse from anywhere between the seven heavens. And so, Badasari, this concept then of kursi, we understand that when we are talking about dimensions, we're talking about planes of existence, we're speaking about things that in many cases might not exist in this realm, in this physical world. So here we are talking about a kursi, a chair, certainly. It is mentioned to be a footstool, subhanAllah, but not the footstool that we think about. So how do we understand the concept of this kursi then, when we are saying that it is not in a physical sense what we perceive it to be?
Yeah, Muhammad Fasih, firstly, I think we have to understand from what the Quran says and what the Hadith says, is that Allah's throne is above the water. Allah's throne, the arsh, is above the water. And the kursi is below the water. Now, when we talk water here, as far as I went and as deep as I went to try and get a comment on what is the understanding of the water there, because now you're talking, nothing from creation can go beyond. So clearly this water must be symbolic, it must be figurative. And the only thing, and here I'm speculating, this is purely my own personal speculation, not based on research or what I got from any of the other scholars. The only thing that assisted me here was Allah says in one of the verses in the Quran, I don't have the exact chapter and verse, is that, do we not know, Allah speaks to us, that Allah created everything from water, every living thing from water. So that to me gives me a hint There is something that exists above the kursi. And this is just speculation. Please forgive me. I ask Allah's forgiveness if I'm now going too far. But I'm basing it on what I extracted from another verse in the Quran, that there must be some substance that is referred to as water, that is above the kursi, um, and Allah's throne is above that. The arsh is above the water. I don't know if I've gone too far now, Muhammad Fasih. Maybe you should come in now.
But certainly, I think that is quite a, profound and very interesting an analysis, particularly when we think about the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does mention that everything was created from water, every living thing was created from water, subhanAllah. So it gives us an indication. When we talk about again the concept of water, Padisani. So we're talking about this existing in a realm where the laws of this world do not apply. Certainly, the water that we understand that comes out of the tap, or that when we jump into the ocean, behaves in a certain way because of gravity, because of light, because of atoms, and all of these things. Certainly, so when water is mentioned here, can we then say that that water is referring to something that is beyond our concept, but the term water is used to give us an understanding, a familiar term, for us to make some kind of sense of what is being mentioned here.
If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used another term that we've never ever heard about, then uh, what sense would it make to us, even if we hear this term? If it's a term that's totally unknown, never heard about. So Allah uses symbolism throughout the Quran to assist us to understand things that would otherwise be totally incomprehensible. Now, the other thing also, that the water acts as a separation between the kursi and the arsh. It separates, even though that's the boundary, it's the ceiling of all creation. That's the kursi. Then above that is the water. And above the water is the throne, the actual seat of power, where every divine command, instruction, the will of Allah is exercised from the arsh. Now, the arsh encapsulates everything in the entire creation. Everything. It is there is nothing outside that. Now, you're going to say, or may say, but did I not say that that's the boundary? The kursi is the boundary. In fact, just below the arsh, the roof of Jannah is just below the arsh. So there's a place there that is totally different from the rest of creation, which is called Jannah. And Jannah, the roof of Jannah will be just under the actual throne.
Subhanallah, the voice of Badisani Mani. This is the program Tawhid and the Creation, exploring the book, The Essentials of Tawhid. Book 3 in the series, authored by Badisani Mani. Time for us to take a break, and when we come back, inshallah, we will continue. Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to the program Tawheed and the Creation, exploring the book, The Essentials of Tawheed. Tonight we are looking at the 7th verse of the 7th portion of Ayatul Kursi once again, and this verse deals with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's kursi, that deals with Allah with the chair as it is described or as it is explained. And but certainly when we look at these terms, how important is it for us um, to never confine our understanding to a physical realm? Because it's so easy for us when we see terms mentioned, our minds go to things that are familiar. And what is the danger of that? Of us trying to attribute physical things, or trying to attribute time and space as it exists in our realm.
Um, Muhammad Fasir, it's so important to have our tawhid right. This is such a familiar verse. We all recite it sometimes several times per day. We all know it, the children know it, but we can make this very, very big mistake by looking at the verse and interpreting it using physical worldly examples. The moment you talk about a throne or a chair or a footstool, then immediately we have certain images that goes with that. We have to remind ourselves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have body parts like a human being, or like anything in creation that has different organs and components that make up Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is very crucial.
And but certainly, obviously, having body parts and components and a physical body would be imperfection in a sense, because just like a human being has a physical body, you can stand behind the human being and surprise that human being. Just as a human being has a physical body, um, you cannot be in two places at the same time. So, hence, a human being has imperfection. And also, we will remember uh, Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam uh, referring to certain things and saying how this could not be his Lord because for the mere fact that Allah is ever present. Allah does not leave. The sun sets. Although there are people who've worshipped the sun sets. It's not constant in the sky. The moon sets. It's not constant in the sky. So when we talk about that, we're talking certainly about imperfections. And so certainly, I imagine we're saying that imperfections can never be applied to Allah, for Allah is perfection.
Yeah, Muhammad Fasih, now we coming to touching on the essence of our tawheed, that Allah does not have material form like anything in creation. Allah does not look like any image that we can ever imagine. Now, some of the people who believed incorrectly in the past, to overcome this difficulty of believing in the unseen without an image, they said Allah is the owner of the universe. So if Allah speaks about his hand or his foot, then Allah does have a hand and a foot, because Allah doesn't say anything that is not true. But Allah's hand and foot is what belongs to Allah, and it befits Allah, and it is something that we can never comprehend. But Allah does have a hand and does have a foot. Now that is disbelief. When I was younger, I tried to overcome my problems. Maybe Allah does it like this, but in a way that I can't understand, but it is like that. We must not fall in the trap to assign a body or body parts or limbs or organs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah sees without eyes, hears without ears. Because if, for example, Allah had an eye with which He saw, a divine eye, then it would mean Allah's sight, divine sight of being all seeing, is dependent on the eye. Allah is never dependent on anything. Allah never ever needs anything. If you said Allah had a body cannot exist outside of space, a material body. And if Allah had a body, may Allah forgive us for speaking about these things. But if Allah had a body, then what would be outside the body of Allah? Then it means that Allah is not ever present, and that Allah is the owner and controller. It means that where Allah is, there's some space outside where Allah is not. Then you say Allah is limited to where Allah is, but Allah can move to another space. Those are things difficult to understand, but crucial for us to actually make our iman and our aqidah correct. So when we say Allah does not have body parts, as difficult as it is for us to understand, Allah has no body, Allah does not have limbs or organs. And when Allah speaks about these things in the Quran, as you mentioned earlier, Muhammad Fasih, certain examples are used only so that we can get a concept or an idea to understand what is being conveyed to us. Otherwise, it would be totally impossible for us to understand if Allah speaks about Himself, Muhammad Fasih.
But certainly also, again, the importance of getting the concepts right in one's mind, because certainly others have fallen prey to these concepts and have then looked at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a physical manner, or try to imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a physical manner. And so when we start talking about the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we talk about the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are talking about things that are infinite, attributes that are infinite. So certainly you cannot, you cannot combine infinity or infiniteness with something that with something that is physical, that is in many cases, because physical is normally temporary. So you cannot combine something that is physical or is bound by certain laws, subhanallah, because
Or,
Allah is
or,
not bound
or
by any
space.
laws
The,
or
the,
space.
the two things, time and space, is a quick way. If time and space applies to something, you know that can never be Allah. Whatever it is that you're thinking, if time and space applies to it, it can never ever apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we talk about our tawhid, it's important to always test certain concepts. And this thing about the throne or the footstool is there to assist us only. But the point that I thought was so useful, now how are you going to get to know Allah then? You can't see Allah. Allah's not visible. Allah doesn't look like anything we can imagine. How are you going to get to know Allah? You know Allah through His sifat. Know Allah through His sifat and His divine names. That is what Allah instructed us. If you want to get to know me through my sifat. What? By the qualities, the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you'll never be able to see the essence or the that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not that that is something that one shouldn't even think, isn't it perhaps this or isn't it perhaps that? You can't, isn't whatever. Nothing can ever come to your mind, because Allah is other than whatever you can imagine. Your mind is not able to come up with anything, no matter how clever you are, no matter how high your status is, whether you're a malaika or whether you not even the malaika, not even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam can know the essence and the actual that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only Allah, as the only perfect being, perfection can only perfection can know perfection. Imperfection can never ever comprehend what is perfection. Subhanallah. Muhammad Fasih.
Subhanallah. But certainly, I want to say a big shukran for joining us this evening. And of course, once again, reflecting on a verse that, subhanallah, is to be found in in Surah Baqarah, 255th verse of Surah Baqarah, one that we grow up with, but subhanallah, that we are learning to understand that there's so much more than just the translation. And by Allah
Subhanallah.
subhanahu wa ta'ala, make the translation or the meanings that we derive from here, that Allah opens for us and allows for us to understand. May Allah enrich our tawhid, our iman,
Ameen.
and
Ameen.
grant us closeness to Him through through this knowledge. Ameen, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Ameen.
Shukran so much, Brother Sadi, and all the best.
Afwan Muhammad Fasir, and shukran for having me on the show.
Alhamdulillah, a pleasure. Jazakallah khair. And of course, also, if you'd like a copy of the book, The Essentials of Tawheed, in PDF format, or any of the other books, you're welcome to visit salimani.co.za and download them in PDF format. You can also check out the YouTube channel that Brother Sadi has posted all of his discussions, Zoom discussions around matters of Tawheed, looking at predestination, looking at the Ayatul Kursi, and various other concepts. You can visit YouTube and search for Sadi Mani, and you'll find all of the videos there, inshallah. Well, from myself, Muhammad Fasih Peterson, it's been a pleasure being in the company. I bid you assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and have a safe evening further. But Sadi, shukran so much. It was cool. Alhamdulillah.